Hi, I'm Lauren Hamilton, accountant for therapists. Today I want to talk about burnout and how that can affect your therapy practice, and maybe what are some financial signals that are also showing up when you are feeling burnt out in your practice. So let's jump into it. So, when we talk about burnout, a lot of times that's obviously affecting how you feel and your emotions. And the tricky part is that this can lead into other factors in your life. So, it's not just about your mental state, but it could also be about how you're showing up in other places in your life, especially in your practice. And a lot of times people don't really factor in the financial or the money part, when we're talking about someone being burnt out or going through that process. And so some of these things can really add up, and, not to add on to the level of heaviness that you're feeling in a burnout, but just again, touching on these points so that you can be aware of them. And maybe you're in that spot where you don't even realize that you're burnt out yet, and maybe going through these will kind of maybe give you some signals of, oh, maybe I am kind of experiencing this right now, and maybe I do need to take a step back and kind of reevaluate and go through some processes or remedies to help with burnout. So, impact number one is inconsistent income. And, when you're burnt out, your energy isn't consistent, and that can directly impact your schedule. So maybe you're canceling sessions, or you're reducing your availability because, you only have capacity for the day to do only like 2 to 3 sessions, and you're avoiding filling any open slots. Maybe somebody canceled on you and you decide, I'm not even going to reach out to my, cancellation list to see if somebody can come in instead. And so what that can look like just financially is a fluctuating monthly revenue. So you're not going to have your steady revenue stream because of the inconsistency of seeing clients. And so, that's going to make it difficult for planning ahead, and again, just increasing that stress around money, because the bills are going to come whether you are making money or not. And when those show up and the money, that you're expecting to have in your account is not there, that is a real stress, and that is a real fear. So even just a few missed sessions a week can add up to that quickly. And again, I don't want this to be a adding on to your fear, but is this something that you maybe find yourself doing right now? Are you maybe canceling things? Are you reworking your schedule so that way you're working less, just because your capacity, like emotionally, is a lot lower than maybe it used to be? And that might be one indication that you're reaching a burnout level. Impact number two is undervaluing your services. So, again, burnout comes with an emotional exhaustion, and it can make it really hard to advocate for yourself, or really just to have the energy to do the right things for yourself. So that could look like maybe delaying raising your rates. Maybe you've known that you needed to do that, but you just feel like you don't have the energy to have that conversation with people or to make that decision. A lot of times burnout leads to decision fatigue. And so when you're, constantly making decisions during the day, or, over the course of months and weeks, making that final decision to raise your rates, that might be included in that burnout stage. Maybe you're also hesitating to enforce your policies. So let's say somebody did cancel on you and you do have a cancellation fee, but you're just not enforcing it because you just don't have the energy to go after that person and request the cancellation fee. So there again, you could be leaving money on the table technically. So some financial impacts from this is, you just lower revenue than what your practice really can sustain, especially again, because the bills are going to keep coming in. Maybe in another side of the coin is just that you're working more for less income because your rates need to be raised and you haven't done that yet. So maybe you're taking on more clients to make up for that difference. This is also just going to create a slower path to financial stability. So again, if your practice is not sustaining the revenue that it needs to, then it's not going to be stable. And in turn, you're not going to be stable. And so you're going to constantly be playing this catch-up game of trying to get the money in to pay your bills. So sometimes it's not just about the pricing, it's about being able to set your boundaries and having the energy to enforce those and to make those decisions for yourself. So again, if you're finding yourself delaying this or having, more of an issue with promoting yourself, again, maybe this is a sign of burnout for you. Impact number 3, and I see this a lot even with people who aren't burnt out, it's just an overwhelming thing in general, but you're just avoiding your numbers altogether. And like I said, this is a big one for everybody. So when you're overwhelmed and your nervous system is just shot, you're like, I just can't look at it right now because I don't have the capacity to deal with what it's going to tell me, whether it's maybe even good or bad. You're just kind of numb to the whole thing of it. And so when that does happen, your bookkeeping can get delayed, your reports aren't being looked at, you're not making maybe the right decisions for your business because you're unaware of things that are going on, and tax planning gets pushed off. And that can be a big one, especially if you're not keeping up with that quarterly. That can lead to bigger issues in the year, only because if you're not paying in those taxes, your penalties for that, your tax liability could increase, and there could just be a lot of unnecessary things that happen, whereas, if you were making a consistent effort to doing that. So there are some financial impacts, but again, if you're coming from a place of burnout, it is hard to get yourself to do these things. And sometimes being able to reach out for support is how you can help bridge that gap until you can kind of get out of the burnout stage and get back to, a regular flow for yourself. So another impact that I've kind of had trickling in with these others is just stalled growth decisions. So again, making decisions, decision fatigue, all of that kind of goes into that burnout phase. And that can be really hard and it can be really challenging. And so maybe you're putting off hiring help because the thought of, interviewing people and going through the payroll process, maybe that's overwhelming to you. Or maybe you need a new EHR system and you're putting off researching that. And so a lot of times, as people in burnout, we just stay in this survival mode. So we're just staying, consistent because that's really all we can manage at that time. However, and while we're in that survival mode, that's what we need to be in to make it through each day. But the impacts of that can be, your income can be plateaued, you're limiting your scalability, and you are missing those opportunities for expansion. So again, growth requires energy, and if you're in this stalled period of burnout, it can kind of take that away. And so once you're able to come back to making these decisions, it'll really impact the growth of your practice. Another impact, sometimes with burnout, maybe, and I've kind of mentioned this before in the other one, is that you're overworking. Sometimes some of us can, just want to push through it. And so we're just constantly chugging along and just pushing through it and overworking. And that can be frustrating because if you're working more and you're not seeing these increases in profits and you just are frustrated because you're putting in all this work and all this effort and you're just not seeing the reward for it. And so some of those things might be because you have blinders on, or maybe you're just so focused on one thing that you're not taking in the bigger picture of things or the bigger view of things. And that might be where you need to have support to help you bridge over that gap, and being able to have somebody come in and look at it from a different perspective and a different point of view. Because a lot of times, as we're putting work and effort into it, we have this perspective of we're doing everything right and we're doing everything that we can, and it's still not working. And that can lead to burnout too, because, as you're putting in all of this effort and you're getting discouraged, then that's not something that screams to me, yay, I want to get up and go to work every day and fail. And so I know it can feel like that, but most of the time, if you have somebody coming in and looking at it and just saying, actually, what I'm seeing is if you just make these couple of changes, then you'll be right on track. And then maybe you can cut back on the working more, and maybe you can feel a little bit better about the results that you are seeing in the future. So to kind of wrap this up and talking about burnout is a real thing, and it's a real feeling. It's a real mindset, and it's something that does take, as therapists, I'm sure you help your clients with this too, but it is something that takes a minute to kind of readjust and to realign and get out of that state. And while you are, working from that place, it is hard to make these decisions, and it is hard to make yourself do things like look at your numbers and pay your taxes and increasing your rates or working with somebody to help you with some of these financial decisions. But just kind of know in the back of your mind too that this isn't sustainable. So while burnout is a very real thing and something that all of us maybe at some point or another will experience, just knowing when you have hit that point and knowing, okay, I am in this burnout stage, and not to put so much pressure on yourself at that point that this is why maybe it is hard for me to make decisions right now because I am in a, burnout state and decision fatigue is really high right now. And I'm coming at everything from a very anxious place when really, you went into this business to, have a practice on your own, whether it be civility, flexibility, freedom, all the words that come up for you, the reason why you chose to open this practice. And so that's really what you want to get back to. And that can be hard. And, as a therapist, I'm sure you understand the, stages and processes of going from a place of burnout to back to a regular stated mind and situation. So the next thing I want to offer you some practical tips on how to kind of get through some of these financial things as you're in this burnout state. The first thing is if you feel like you need support or help, reach out to somebody, whether that's me or to somebody that you know personally or that you've worked with before. I think it's always important to have support. And if you don't have that support going through that process of getting out of burnout, it makes it a lot more difficult and maybe prolonged. So just realizing that you are in this state and that maybe you do need some help or support in taking that next step to just get that. And maybe with the help of that person, they can kind of give you some steps to go through, some of these decisions that you've been putting off. Once you've done that, the first thing that I would do is just look at your monthly income over the last 3 to 6 months and just kind of gauge, does that feel right? If it's not, maybe coming up with a few things that you can change to see that number go up a little in the next few months. Again, noticing patterns with your energy level and your availability, making sure that your schedule fits a sustainable capacity. Maybe what you're seeing right now is just too much, and that is leading to your burnout. And so maybe you do need to cut it back some, which I know kind of negates one of the impacts I was saying. But I think being very intentional about your schedule and taking the time that you need for yourself and trying not to cancel sessions because you're feeling less energy. If you had a consistent schedule that was sustainable for you, then most likely you won't have to cancel those sessions. And then reviewing your pricing and policies and staying true to that. I think a lot of times the pricing piece can be very scary for people. And we do need this practice to be sustainable, and you do need to be able to pay your bills. And that's really, from a financial standpoint, that's what we're doing as business owners. And most importantly, again, don't try to fix everything at once. Just take one thing at a time, and it doesn't have to be all in one day. I myself do that a lot of times where I feel like there's a lot of things that I need to fix, and so I want to try to get it all done in one day. And that's just not possible. And so being able to give yourself some grace and some time to sit and go through one thing at a time. And again, getting that support that you need to have someone that can help walk through this process with you. So if you feel like you're kind of in this stage of burnout and your finances are showing you some signals of burnout, this is something that I would love to help you with and to support you with. I do this with a lot of therapists who come to me and they're just overwhelmed and they don't know where to start, or they've started and they know that it's probably not right, and just having that financial peace of mind to just lift that weight off of your shoulders and not carrying around that burden of, I don't know if I'm doing this right. And that can be a very big thing. So I want to help walk through that process with you and help walk alongside you with that and take it step by step. And again, if you are in a state of burnout, I do just want to hold space for that for you and recognize that that is a real thing. And that is a real thing that business owners just in general go through multiple times. Again, because we can get so laser focused in what we're doing, and sometimes we just keep going, keep going, keep going. And then, at some point it all stops. So again, just want to validate that you are going through a real thing right now, and it is a hard thing. But it is something that, as you recognize and kind of take the steps to be able to get yourself out of that, and then getting yourself back on track, and then thinking about too, what are some of the things that you can do going forward to kind of help lessen the chance of getting to a burnout point. Because let's face it, it's not a fun state at all. So just want to mention that here at the end. And if I can help you in any way with your finances and accounting, I would love to talk to you more about that. If you found this video helpful and supportive, please like and share it so that we can help those who are going through similar things as well. We want everybody to thrive in this business and continue to doing the great work that you are doing and the impact that you are making on our communities and the people around you. Until next time, be well.